Finally! Okay, finally! And I have white. I'm gonna go d4. No, now my opponent is 21-21. No! I wait for games for half an hour and then I get a low rated opponent. What I want to do, I'll go c4. I'm outside. I borrowed the jacket because it was cold. So there are people and babies and dogs inside. And there are seagulls and car noises and sea noises outside. So that's the better option. Okay, my opponent's playing the Slav. Let's see which line they go for. Okay, the semi-Slav. I'll play e3, and then I may play the anti-Meran. But we will see. My last game was awful. This is a weird move. I don't know bishop e7. Bishop e7 makes very little sense in light of c5, which is what black would like to play, and bishop e7 also doesn't support e5. So yeah, let's keep things flexible with queen c2. I don't want to play bishop d3, allowing my opponent to go into a Meran with the bishop on e7, even though that's not useful. But in the anti-Meran, the bishop belongs on d6. So I'll just go bishop e2. If my opponent takes, for some reason, there's a bishop on e7. This is slightly suboptimal. Okay, bishop d3. Normally you want the knight on d7, yeah, for c5, and then you recapture with the knight. But now, can I play a3 and b4 to prevent c5? So in the Meran and anti-Meran, if black achieves c5, then black is equal. So how do we stop that? If I go a3, my opponent may go a5. But then c5 is harder to play. I like that. a3. If a6, I go b4. And then I have time for bishop b2. If then c5, I can take it. Yeah, I'm going a3. I like this. I want to keep fighting against c5 if I can. Usually, and surely you know this, I'm on the black side of this, and I almost always have black when it's the semi-Slav. Perhaps I could have gone e4 immediately, but I think a3 is going to be more annoying for my opponent. I know what I find annoying. And not being able to play a6, c5 is very annoying. So now if I go b4 and my opponent goes a5, b4, a5 takes. That seems nice. b4, a5 takes. It doesn't seem nice. e4, c5, e5. b4, a5. Can I go rook b1? Is rook b1 a weird move? It's actually not a weird move. I'm experimenting a bit here, but as long as I can keep these two moves under control, I should be fine. Or better. So b4, a5, rook b1. Getting away from the pin. I like that. I'm gonna do that. It seems powerful. Because on rook b1 takes, there's no rook a4. There's no rook a3 or rook a2. So I don't see any downside to doing this. The only downside may be bishop. Yeah, okay, let's just do what we'd intended. So now c5 is never happening. That much is clear. I wonder how my opponent plans to develop this bishop. The c4 square is weak, there may be knight b6, but I always have knight e5 to cover c4. Also knight e5 is coming as soon as that knight moves away. I don't know, positionally this seems suspicious for my opponent. Also queen c7 fails to knight b5. So it's not that easy to develop the queen. Bishop b7 doesn't do anything, so I can just castle. I'm not afraid of c5 takes, bishop f3, gf3. That seems excellent to me. Okay. The knight's coming to c4, so I guess I should play knight e5. If knight... oh, maybe e4. If knight d5, then my pawn is double attacked. That could be annoying. So if e4, then knight c4. And if I take... e4, knight c4, I have e5 winning the h7 pawn, so I don't think that's playable. e4, e5 I can take, e4, c5 I can take. Yeah, I like e4, this seems powerful. If knight a4 I can still play knight takes a4, and on rook takes a4 I have e5. This seems correct, there's no need for knight e5. My opponent needs to play something like h6 to defend the pawn, or g6. But even so, it seems very, very risky. So now if I go rook fd1, and my opponent plays knight c4, takes. That seems okay. I definitely want my rook on d1. Definitely. Okay, so I'll just improve my position and play rook d1. I see no reason not to do this. I'm expecting knight a4. But that I may just be able to ignore. Yeah. So if I ignore this, knight takes, queen takes, I don't think there are any real issues. In fact, I may have knight e5. Is there any way to improve my position before I do anything rash? Is bishop f4 an improvement? Well, it connects my rooks. I'm hesitant to play e5 because then I no longer have knight e5 as an option. So if I go bishop f4 and my opponent plays knight h5, I don't want to take on a4 because then rook a4 and b4 is under pressure. We also have to calculate d5. So d5 takes, d5, c takes, e takes or knight takes, or even knight c3. Oof, there are so many variations. Ideally, I want my bishop on e3, but unfortunately, there's knight g4. So let's play h3. to limit that. I don't really care about knight c3. All I care about is not taking on a4. This way I'm preparing bishop e3, and that prevents queen b6. So once again it becomes much harder for my opponent to develop his queen and connect his rooks. Yeah, this is exactly what I was playing against. Now you see why h3 was useful. Now I'm threatening d5, winning immediately. Because I would be able to take on e6, break open the position. An interesting positional game. I mean, I'm not sure what my opponent should do now. Because unless the queen moves away, there's going to be d5. If the queen moves to d7, to c7, there's knight takes b5. If the queen moves back to d8, then I will have gained a clean tempo. So I'm not sure. Maybe knight c3. And then I take, and then queen c7. But then bishop b5. So I'm not sure. Maybe queen a6 and trying to infiltrate down the a file. Okay. The main thing I'm trying to do is play against the bishop on b7. As long as that bishop remains passive, I'm much better. I also don't want to play e5, giving the f6 knight the d5 square. So I'm looking at knight e5. Now that I've eliminated black's most active piece, which was the knight on a4, I have to keep playing against the remaining active pieces. So that's going to be the queen and the rook. However, on queen a6 or queen a7, there's simply rook a1, because the a1 square is defended 3 times. So again, queen c7 loses a pawn to bishop b5. I don't know what to suggest for my opponent. Knight d7 runs into d5, queen d8 makes queen b6 just a useless move. And slowly but surely, I can prepare bishop c2, queen d3, e5 with mating threats on h7. So I think my opponent should have chosen g6 instead of h6 to fight against that. So currently, I've played 9 games so far. Oh, really? Okay. So d5, the queen moves. To, let's say, a6. d6. I'm expecting fe6. Then if I go queen b3, the rook's defended, but the e6 pawn isn't. So how does my opponent defend? I also have knight e5 coming up. If my opponent goes queen a7, no, queen a7 isn't possible. So queen a6 will be played. So d5, queen a6. d6, fe6, queen b3. How can that pawn be defended? Bishop c8? Maybe. And then knight e5, then rook a3. And then queen c2. Yeah, I like that. This is fine. Also, I don't have to play queen b3. I can immediately play queen e5. And then on bishop c8, I may have... queen e5. Okay, let's just take here first. So queen e5 or queen b3. I think bishop c8 is the only way to save the pawn. On both moves. Rook a3 doesn't work now because I can just take on f7 with check. And the bishop on b7 remains bad. So I'm still better. Whatever happens with this business on e6, I still have a much better minor piece, and my opponent is likely going to have to play bishop c8 to defend the pawn anyway. So the bishop will return to its original square, which is sad, but necessary. Also, if bishop c8 after queen e5, there's no knight d7 because I just take. I think queen e5 may be better because I'm still covering a1 and I'm not running into rook a3. So I don't really see a point to the battery on the a file for my opponent. Is there an alternative to fe6? Well, not unless you give up a pawn. Okay, queen e5. I see bishop c8. Maybe king f7. But that seems very scary. Because I will have queen c7 and knight e5 check. Oof. Oof, 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 oof. And if queen b3, bishop c8... No, I prefer queen e5. Queen e5 seems more straightforward. I don't think king f7 is playable. Okay. Now, how do I increase the pressure? My opponent isn't really threatening anything. I don't think so. So, what if I go knight h4? There's only one sensible knight move. And that's knight d5. And then I can go knight g6. And if knight e3, I take on e7. If king f7, I take on c8. If on knight h4 my opponent plays knight d7, then I just take on e6. So I like knight h4. I don't see a good defense to knight h4. I can also go knight d4 and just win the pawn, I guess. Knight d4, what does my opponent do? King f7 again? I don't believe king f7 is playable at all. Knight d4 or knight h4, what do I do? I like knight d4. Because I may also be able to play knight b3, knight a5, trapping the rook. Okay, I'm playing knight d4. Knight b3, knight a5 is a serious strategic threat. The knight has no squares other than h7. King f7 is the only way to defend the pawn, as far as I can see. King f7. And then if I go queen c7, how does my opponent unpin? I mean, I can go queen c7 and just win the c6 pawn. So yeah, I would say that I have a winning position. Because I'm threatening, at that point, if king f7, queen c7, I'm threatening knight c6. And then rook e8 is the only option. Okay. So my opponent just gives up the pawn. So knight e6. Rook e8 fails to knight c7. And knight c7 threatens to win the bishop. So I don't see a defense to this. Maybe bishop d6? Does that trap my queen? Nah. It may. I have to watch out for bishop d6. So what if I go queen c7? Double attacking c6 and the bishop on e7. If rook d7, I take on c6. If then rook d4, I take the queen first. That seems fine. Queen c7. How does my opponent defend? Bishop d6. I take on c6 with the queen. Or sorry, bishop d6, I take the rook on e8. On d8. Yeah, okay, I'm playing this. I may be hanging bishop b4, rook b4, c5. But there is bishop b5, so I think I'm fine. Okay, so this stops bishop d6. I don't see a good defense to the c6 pawn. If bishop d7... Maybe just rook bc1? Because the bishop cannot move. Rook d7? Okay, so what if I just take on c6? Takes. Queen takes, knight takes. Yeah, that seems fine. I mean, I'm threatening to take here, so my opponent probably has to react. Oh, I'm down to 4 minutes. Okay, let's speed up. Now I think I just win this pawn as well. If rook d4, I can take the queen. I think we have a winning endgame after the queen trade. Because b5 and e6 are extremely weak. Is there really a way to defend everything? Rook d6 doesn't work because of queen a6. Anything a6, and then I take on b5. Or on e6. Not on e6, the rook is on d6, but... I see no sensible alternative to taking. I think the queen has to be traded. Okay, I'm catching up on the clock. Only 30 seconds behind now, so that's okay. Okay, now how do you save b5 and the bishop pair? I don't think you can. You'd have to go bishop f8 and then I just take on b5. Yeah, so it looks I'm gonna be 2 pawns up. I mean, if something like... Okay, that's very passive. Don't I just win with knight b8? Knight b8. Rook somewhere takes on a6, rook a6, bishop b5. Yeah, that's another pawn. Okay. That's not another pawn, but I have the bishop pair and I'm up a pawn. So how do we restrict this knight? I feel like rook c1 is the way to go, but there is rook d7. But I can take on b5. Okay. Then my opponent takes on e4, but then I take the rook. Okay, so that's not playable. So let's grab some space. Maybe I should have played f3. I think I am gonna play f3 at some point. That does give away g3. Okay. So if I go rook c8 on king f7, I should have played f3. Because there's king f7. On rook c8, king h7, I have e5. And then on rook d3, ef6, bishop... No, actually no. Okay, so let's just admit that my move was stupid and put the rook back on d1. My move was stupid, so I'm admitting my mistake. I need to play f3 at some point, although then my bishop will be loose. Rook c1 was stupid. I could have gone bishop c5, that would have been better. Perhaps I was too happy too quickly. It doesn't seem easily winning now. Not at all. I'm still much better, and I'm sure the engine would say it's winning, but there are tricks now. Even rook d7 seems like a sensible move. I don't think I agree with this. I mean, I can take on b5. And then rook b5, and then rook d7, and then bishop b4 has to be played. Don't I have bishop c5? Yeah, bishop b5 doesn't even lose a pawn, I think. So rook takes, okay. What? Okay, my opponent just wants to take on b4. But what if I don't allow that? What if I play bishop c5? Bishop c5, rook b5, rook e7. Bishop c5, bishop c5, bc5. The bishop's defended. Is that too risky? I don't think so. There's no bishop g5, as far as I can see. I don't know, both moves are bad because now I'm up 2 pawns and I have a protected, or not protected, I have a passed pawn on b4. And with my bishop on c5, my opponent's never winning that pawn. And where does the bishop even go if my opponent declines the trade? At some point I... okay. I'm happy to see this. This is a simplification, and I will be able to play c6 at some point. So I need to chase that knight away. I'm thinking f4 is the only way to save material. f4, the knight moves to g6. But then that attacks f4. f4, knight g6. f5, takes. Knight e5, rook e1. Okay, I'm playing that. Seems good. Ah, wait, there's rook c5. Yeah, there's rook c5. I cannot do that. Okay, I'm playing c6 because I don't see anything else. f4, there was rook c5 in the end. My opponent needs to trade on b1 first. Why am I in this equal endgame? I'm so angry. Okay, I'm still better because this is a weakness, but I'm... with a minute on the clock, I'm not 100% confident I'm gonna be able to win this. I will do my best. I need to get my king to e5, my rook on b5 so that there are no checks. Then I'm threatening king e6, and then when my opponent defends with king f7 or king e7, I can check it away, check the king away and take on e6. That's my plan. So my king needs to come to e5. And I think it can safely reach e5. Okay. There are flies. I needed to play f3 because on king f4 there was rook c2. Sorry for not talking. When I have a minute on the clock, it's very hard to talk. Maybe I should have gone rook b5 now instead of h4. The idea being, if the king moves, I can safely go king e5. I never want to play e5 because that makes it hard to infiltrate. Although it does give me the option to go rook d7, rook d6, with potentially winning king and pawn endgames. I'm up on the clock for the first time this game, although it's only 10 seconds. Okay, g4, g5, takes, king g3. I don't like that. g3, g5, takes, king g4. G3, e5, king g4. g6, h5 is the threat. Okay, I'm playing g3 for now. If my opponent plays h5... my opponent could play h5, but then I have e5. Now I'm happy. Now that there's no h5 or g5, I'm happy. There is rook g5. Am I crazy? What is wrong with me? I didn't even see that. I didn't see that that can be taken. My god, I didn't even see that. Jesus. Okay. I honestly, I had no idea that my h-pawn was attacked. I was only looking at rook g5. I don't know why. It's obviously equal now. Okay, I have to calm down. You have no idea how mad I am, but I won't be mad. I'm gonna focus and try to win this game. I want to go king g4, so I wanted to prevent h5. Also, I'm preventing the g-pawn from moving because I can take on h6. I'm also preventing rook h5. I'm gonna have to calculate rook d6 very precisely. Rook d6 takes. Okay. I don't believe I drew this game. I'm gonna keep fighting. King f7 allows, yeah. No, why would I do this? Now I'm losing? Oof, my opponent didn't see it. He could have gone just rook anywhere and checked me. Yeah, now it's just a draw. Watch out. Do not play king f5. I mean, he can play king f5, I'd be happy, but... It's still a draw. Even if I win the pawn, it's an easy draw. Okay. I don't know. I should just offer a draw. I don't believe I drew this game. I wanna scream. I don't know. Let's just offer a draw. There's no point in playing on in this position. So The first thing I'm wondering about is this position, whether a3 was correct. Because I've never seen this before. Let's see. Castles is best. a3 is fine. e4 was best. I was looking at e4. a5, rook b1. White is still better. Okay, here, here, here. e4 is correct. h6, queen e2. Queen e2 prevents knight c4, so that makes sense. h3 plus 1, good. Let me get rid of the variation arrows. Queen b6. Okay, this is fine, fine. Wow. Queen g3? What's the point? Aha, bishop h6. What if knight h5? Ah, if knight h5, queen g6. Oof. I should have taken on e7, but this is also fine. Yeah, rook d1, rook c1 was my first very stupid move. f4. I should have gone f4. But I was looking at... Yeah, I was looking at rook c5. How does this work? Ah, this is crazy. Bishop c4. Ah, I didn't see that. I played c6, and now it's bound to be close to equal. Let's see if I had any winning chances. Yeah, rook b5 first. Makes sense. Yeah, I don't know why I dropped that pawn. I don't know. I just don't know. This makes no sense. Yeah, this is equal, equal. Yeah, okay, we're gonna have to look at this. Okay. Congratulations to my opponent for surviving this. I mean, I don't know why I did this. Yeah, I'm sorry you had to see this. I had such a good position. Thank you for watching. It will get better. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.